All right, and welcome. As we begin our webinar today on the benefits of understanding your audience. A quick round of introductions. My name is Ziech-Lopez, and I'm a director in product marketing here at MessageGears. And today I'm joined by Ricky Timbers. Ricky, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm a senior product manager here at MessageGears, overseeing the accelerator product.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how it's best how you can understand your audience, the data issues that get in the way, and some things that MessageGears has recently rolled out that make that a little bit easier. To start with, I want to talk a little bit about the struggles of segmentation. So segmentation feels like it should be easy. It's a fairly straightforward logical problem, right? You're trying to separate people into different logical buckets so you can message them and give them different experiences with your brand. The issue is that many segmentation tools and a lot of the things that drive segmentation are fairly complicated. So you wind up in one of two camps. Either tools that, as you can see in the picture here, are difficult to use, complicated, don't show much about the user, or are not very easy to understand more about the user, or tools that are fairly easy to use, fairly flexible, but either because of data connectivity or many other things, simply lack the capability of the amount of segmentation that many art marketers want to do today. Let's take an example here. We have our member here, Jared Smith. And what you might see in many segmentation tools is who Jared Smith is today. His current loyalty balance, maybe the purchase he just made, his location or his rewards tier. And that's a pretty good snapshot. It tells you a lot about Jared, but to only market to Jared and to only create experiences for him based off of that is kind of like trying to understand a movie by looking at a single frame. You miss a lot of the context going forward and backwards in what Jared's and what your audience's experience has been, how they got to where they are today, and the kinds of interactions they've had with your brand. I just kind of want to open it up with a question here for all of the people in the webinar today. What is the biggest issue you guys face when trying to understand your customer journeys over time, right? This has been the interaction that people have had with your brand, not just today and who they are today, but over the span of the lifetime of the brand. Is it that there's no system of record, no single one piece to really keep a track of who these people are? Is it that you're unable to persist this data over time? Is it a technical problem? Is it maybe that there's too much data, or do you feel that you have this totally nailed down? Ricky, can you tell me a little bit about what you see in the market, and especially in the people that we've talked to?
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, there's not another option, which is all of the above, I guess, minus no problems at all. But
Yeah.
yes, I mean, a lot of what we see with our clients is you have, like Nick was referencing, the snapshot of what that user is, but a lot of that's muddled with all the other attributes that are associated with that recipient that maybe you don't necessarily care about for what you're trying to optimize towards, or as you're trying to use these, creating these system of records, there's a lag, right? So you're launching your campaign, you have some other process that's actually trying to record and create that timeline of what's happening with that recipient, but things are changing constantly, right? Based on what you've shown them, their status might have changed, and then you go to record it, so you don't actually have a true understanding of who they were when you sent them a specific message.
Right, and as I understand it, this kind of leads into some of MessageGears and specifically Segment's recent additions or capability additions. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. So the feature that we're rolling out as part of the MessageGears platform is audience recording, or capturing your audience history. So what this is doing is it's giving the marketer an easy way to capture data, relevant data about a given recipient when they're sending. So you're choosing, when I send a message or when I try and engage with the recipient, be it through email or push or any cross-channel device, social media, Google, uh, it lets you see exactly the state of that person, where they are in terms of their customer lifecycle at that specific time. And it's basically it helps you save time and get better experiences, customer experiences and customer engagement by, you can do frequency capping, offer management, frequency management, and you can utilize this tool to make sure that the data you're basing those things off of is entirely accurate and relevant at that specific moment. The goal of
Yeah,
this is to basically capture those moments as you're engaging with them.
yeah, and just to reflect back on that poll, I'm seeing a lot of the unable to record and too much data as reasons that people aren't capturing this, which is funny when you go back and you think of that looking at a frame of a person and not the whole movie. Can you tell us a little bit about what we'll be seeing today within the product?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to show, I'm going to be demoing our segment product and specifically the blueprint functionality we have. So the ability to visually create segments within your audience, how that can actually help you label your recipients so you can, truly define what segment they were in at that specific time, and then how to capture that and, use it going forward. So what I'm going to demo is basically, we're going to send a cross-channel engagement campaign. We're going to define those segments. We're going to engage those users on multiple channels, and then we're going to show you how we're going to set up the ability to create that timeline of each recipient.
Awesome.
So with that, we're going to pop over to the MessageGears product. So what you're looking at here is I went ahead and set up the data, but this is a preview of what my recipients look like, right? So we have all these attributes here, and these are all available for me to actually create my blueprint, define those rules, and generate those segments. So if we pop back over to the blueprint, you see we just have our starting population, pretty small, just limited to 50,000. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a target, and we're going to start with one of the biggest segments I can do in my audience, right? Which is, have you made a purchase? So we'll create that node. We'll go ahead and define that segment. And then, first purchase made equals, and in this data, it's 1 or 0. So we'll do 1 for true. And we'll go ahead and add that to the blueprint, right? So just like that, and we can go ahead and trigger a count, you're seeing that we already created 2 buckets of recipients. And what these are doing are, and it actually ended up being an even 50-50 split, but what we did is we just split our recipients into 2 buckets. Have you made a purchase or have you not? So now that I know that this is the numbers, I want to add a label. So we're just going to go ahead and define a label here and call this label segment ID. So what this label is this is a field that MessageGears is actually going to append to your recipient data as we're extracting it. So we'll use segment ID. We'll go ahead and set that to, we'll do P for purchase. And then in this everything else node here, which is the negative scenario of what I just showed. So if this is you've made a purchase, this is going to be you've not made a purchase, right? So we'll go ahead and set the segment ID to NP for not purchased, and we'll rename this to not purchased. Oops, there we go. So just like that, I've already categorized my users into 2 buckets. I'm adding a label, and I'll show you what that label looks like in just 1 second here. But I want to refine my audience a little bit further, right? So we've done purchases. Now we want to do that same thing for if you've made a purchase. We want to actually then segment you by loyalty level, right? So if you bear with me for a second, we'll go ahead and call the first one silver. We have loyalty level and equals silver, right? And now I know these values, kind of off the top of my head, but this is going to be, you're generating segments based off the values within, your data. So keep going here.
And and just as a question there, you have, the loyalty level of silver equals silver. Can there be, the business logic here? Can you talk about the kinds of things users do and what needs to be in your data or doesn't need to be in your data?
Yeah, so this is a pretty rudimentary case, and I'll stop right there for gold. And so you can continue to refine that to be as complex as you need to, right? So we'll pop back over here. We have first purchase made equals true. We're going to go ahead and add a rule and say and your purchase date is, greater than, we'll say this year, right? Missing a slash
Sure.
there. So what attributes you're really looking here are what attributes you want to segment your recipients by. So this could be, their purchase information, how they made a purchase, how much have they spent, where they are, are they enrolled in your loyalty? Pretty much any attribute that you want to define a segment within your recipients.
Okay. That makes perfect sense.
So we'll go ahead and add this here. I'll save it. I'm gonna pop over to a completed one here just so you guys aren't watching me make this the whole time. So you can see we started, we have you made purchase, we split by loyalty level. And then again, just for illustration purposes, we're kind of doing one rule per node so you can see what's happening, but I could easily combine all these into one single block if I really wanted to. So we did recent purchase, and then we ultimately defined our targets, right? So we're going to say that we have, this is actually, we're going to do 85, or this is actually backwards, my bad. We're going to do a 85% target, and we'll do a 15% hold, right? So that's just people that we don't want to engage with. And then
Sure.
I use this merge node here, which is basically taking any recipient that fell off at any point in this, right? Whether they've not made a purchase or they have made a purchase and their loyalty is now gone, or they haven't made a purchase in the last year. And I brought them all together because those are who I want to target for re-engagement. So now
Sure.
if I go and I preview this blueprint, now that it's complete, and again, I showed you all these attributes that you could use to target. If you scroll all the way
Oh,
to
I
the
did.
end here, we have the label. And this label is what's generated as a particular recipient is flowing through this tree. So we had P for purchase. They're in our platinum loyalty level, and they ended up falling into the target bucket when they got to that randomized split. So this just kind of shows you a simple demo of how you could actually generate that label to show who that customer is at this particular time.
Okay.
So where this folds in and gets incredibly powerful with audience recording is if I pop over to an external campaign. So this is how I could send either blueprints to various third-party destinations, be it Airship, Google, Facebook. You can see that I selected that blueprint I created. And so for Google, what I want to do is I actually want to just go ahead and select that target group. So I have all my recipients here.
This is the same blueprint you just we
Yeah,
just saw you make. Okay.
correct. So this is the same blueprint I was just showing. And what you're seeing here is, so for Google, I just want to get to my target group. These are people that engage with me, pretty consistently. So I want to use search and maybe not have such a high cost for my marketing because I trust them to actually engage with my content. So if we engage with Google, so we wanted to select the target. You see I have that selection. I went ahead and have my Google destination set up. I'm just going to call it high loyalty October 2020. It is still October, right? I feel like this year is flying by. So,
It's still
and then
2020, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. We can change that to 2021 so we all feel better. Um,
All right.
so with that, um, what you're looking at right here is the actual audience recording, right? So if you recall, when I showed you that preview, there was tons of attributes about my given recipients. But really for my recording to know who this person is at this time, I'm concerned about a couple of things. So there's dynamic values like dynamic MessageGears values, I should say, like what's the campaign ID, what's the campaign name, what what date and time is it? And then there's the actual recipients. So there's a recipient ID, so which in my data, that's a unique identifier for that person. And then I threw in segment ID. So if you guys recall, when I was generating that label, I called it segment ID. And what I did is I made that label be that customer's journey through that blueprint. So what's really powerful about recording that segment ID and the recipient ID, so just two fields out of that whole plethora, is I can now see how a given individual evolves over time. Do they go from a low loyalty to a high loyalty? Has their purchase rate increased? And by recording this, you're able to see that. And what's really cool is, so I had the recording, and in this example, I'm doing for Google Customer Match, excuse me. I can easily switch this over to, we'll do Airship. And what we want to do is, you can see that we have a description, we have field mappings, and maybe for mobile, I want to engage with those recipients that keep falling off. I want to send them a push notification, put something directly in front of them as soon as I can, to try and bring them back, to our products and engage with us. So I'll go ahead and switch to mobile. And again, same thing. I can record those attributes, who they were, what segments they were in. And the biggest part about this is the audience recording is going to use the exact same data that we actually used to launch this campaign. So there's no data latency. Exactly what you sent them is the starting point for what you can record. And you can, if you want, you could choose to record the whole thing. If you want to pare that data down to what's important to you, you can easily do that and map it to whatever data, to whatever table you want to record. And then,
Okay, yeah, I did see that in a lot of the poll responses that the amount of data was kind of had popped up for a few people. So this is, you're saying that no matter what the recipient looks like, you only need to record a few fields. And I do have a question there. You point out the recipient ID and the segment ID. Is that all based off that logic in that blueprint?
half, right? So the recipient ID was actually part of my data, right? That was just an ID I
Okay.
had that was associated to that recipient. That segment ID, yeah, you're bang on. That's something that I generated based on that blueprint. And that's a value that could change every time a recipient flows through it as their data updates and as their attributes change. And then
Okay.
to your point, yes, you can record as much or as little as you want. It's just, you have to set up where you want that to go, and then you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
And
And
then
then
also,
go ahead.
so I was gonna say, and then to take this a step further, the two examples I showed you where I'm sending to Google or I'm sending in this example to Airship, you actually don't have to send anything if you want to do this. If you just want a snapshot to kind of fuel that timeline of what your recipient's doing, we actually have audience recording just as a destination. And all this is going to do is extract that data and let you record it as that exact state. So maybe you don't want to send to Google, but you want to go ahead and update all of your recipient segments. You could use this audience recording destination to do that.
Okay, I understand. So even if even when you and that's actually something I do see in the market too. Any tools that help to understand your person over time, it's that person over time and how they interacted with you, not who you knew them as that day. So this is agnostic of if they were being activated, agnostic of if you were kind of furnishing that brand, just who you giving the user the opportunity to know who everybody was.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. Quick question I'm seeing in the chat here. Is this available in other MessageGears products? So I'm assuming they mean like message. So for our message customers, can they take advantage of something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we pop over to message here, we'll go to our marketing campaigns. And we don't need to save these changes. So we have a campaign here, still under that City and Glory guys. When you get to that overview, you see two buttons here, right? So filter blueprint. That's what I was doing with that blueprint, when I was checking the boxes of who I want to send or who I don't want to send to for that particular send. And then again, we have audience recording, right? So very same flow, pretty much the exact same, and you choose what you want to map and where you want to map it. So yes, it's available for both the segment and message customers.
Okay. So even if people are just regularly being messaged and kind of being activated in that sense, they could still to whoever asked that question, they can still be persistent. You can still keep that timeline.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
a thought that comes up here, the interaction between data and marketing can oftentimes be kind of a rough edge because just the amount of data that marketing needs, marketing being the customer, as well as data at times being the customer. Can you talk a little bit about the kinds of users that will kind of that audience recording may appeal to? And then as a second step, who's allowed to do this? It could get kind of dangerous if I put my IT hat on to think that anybody can just write any amount of data back to my database or my data warehouse. Can you talk a little bit to not just the types of users, but the roles of users as well?
yeah. So the types of users that are going to be using this are really those analysts that are trying to define, how do you want to prioritize messages? How do you want to frequency cap? And they're looking at the historic data of your recipients to define those roles. And then, yeah, spot on. This is a really powerful feature in the sense that it's writing to tables. So there's various permissions on it. So one is the database connection, right? You can actually toggle whether or not I'm allowed to use audience recording with that database connection. So if there's one that's very secure, has pretty sensitive data, you might not want to allow that one for audience recording, but you could easily set up another one still within your own data warehouse to allow for audience recording. And then to take it a step further, the only people that can set this up and use it are people that are actually managing the campaign. So if you have a template author who's just there to design those beautiful templates to get your users to engage, they're not going to be able to use this and write data. It's going to have to be an approved campaign admin.
Sure, sure. That makes a lot of sense. So this is how you would kind of select and for lack of a better term, write that data back to create that timeline. But before we leave the applications, is there anything else you'd like to show us to talk about?
No, I mean, I just think just to reiterate the importance of using the same data to launch your campaign to actually record that exact same data is huge, just because it reduces any chance of there being a mismatch or an update caused by data latency.
Excellent. Um, so I believe we've put together an example of what this might let you do. Um, uh, as you might say, an illustrative example here. Um, so this is an example. If we take what we knew about Jared a little bit earlier, who he was in that point of time, what this now allows us to do is kind of play that frame by frame movie for Jared and say, okay, if I click on or if I want to know a little bit more about him, who has he been? What has been his journey? Gaining, losing, in this example, rewards tiers. You can see here that in this example, he became a Rapid Rewards member sometime in late 2018. And then over a steady stream of email communications, he kind of gained that status. But you saw he lost that status, and the marketing plan was to kind of keep him from being activated until sending him a re-engagement campaign, which appeared to work because he then jumped back into the silver rewards tier. So here, when you layer on the kinds of things that Ricky was talking about with what kind of content was Jared exposed to, as he went from down market to mid market to up market, did Jared and any of these other recipients did they go from responding to subject lines with 25, 10% off to more empathetic subject lines? Specifically within the realms of, Ricky, as we were mentioning earlier, the year 2020, depending on the brand, industry insights have said that consumers are wanting more empathy. But you can sense that shift, and using this feature, you can see that shift, whether it be in email, whether it be in text or mobile, or whether it be simply who this person was not being contacted. Uh, Speaking of the not being contacted, beyond this example, Ricky, is there any benefit to if the person is interacting or if the person is being I would say a loyal brand to, for lack of a better term, kind of keeping the brand status quo and not contacting? Can you talk to that a little bit in this example?
Yeah, so in this example, right, you basically looked at you're using the history of your data to kind of define the action, right? So um, we kept engaging with him. It didn't work, but then however we found out like when we held off, because at this point it's you almost felt like Jared was a committed recipient, a committed customer, but
Yeah.
you kind of learned that, well, the second we stopped that communication is when his behavior, or sorry, we might have over communicated. So we wanted to slow down on that communication and then re-engage. And that kind of helped rejuvenate his life cycle in your customer ecosystem. So it's really interesting in that like there's not a best answer like wholesale, but you can see over time how a given person is reacting and bucket them with like-minded people.
A question just came in asking about the cost or the price of audience recording. Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this feature is free with the Segment product. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to be free with the Segment or Message product.
That's right, because it's available in both mediums. So yes, there's no extra upcharge for being able to do this, because again, this is your data. This is your customer data. This does not go to MessageGears. This sits within your database, and MessageGears is merely giving you more of a way to interact with, enrich, and see that data throughout time. So to go through a couple takeaways of what we learned and what we did today. The thing I want to focus on is a thing that MessageGears is committed to, and the thing that we're trying to do with every feature is remove the barriers of data that get in the way of good marketing, right? So we say things like, tech should liberate and not limit. The data that you have should be more accessible and do better for the kinds of content that you're going to be sending. And that's, I believe, what audience recording is really doing. Ricky, before we wrap up here, you have any last thoughts or anything else you'd like to say?
No, I mean, just that I'm really excited to see where this feature grows, and as we look at, definitely including accurate historical data as part of decisioning and where that starts evolving this feature, so that we can, continue to innovate on it.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. This has been two guys in pink shirts that did not plan that. But thank you very much. Audience recording, I think, is going to be a really impactful feature for marketers and marketing ops that want to know more about their users. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to myself or Ricky. Connect with us on LinkedIn. And I got a question. Yes, we will be, the recordings of this webinar as well as transcripts will be sent out afterwards and will be available on MessageGears. Yes, if Ricky was going blazing fast, I know he does that, you will have the ability to watch this later, and please reach out to us or support with any questions. Ricky, thank you so much for being a good sport. Thank you for the help today. I look forward to doing one of these soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a good day.